Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, and in particular a piece that has captured the imagination of collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike, the 1980p $2 coin that has stunned experts and enthusiasts by reaching a valuation of up to $6 million, not because of its face value which is just 25 cents, but because of the extraordinary errors, minting mistakes, and unique possibilities surrounding its creation that transformed an ordinary piece of currency into one of the most desirable numismatic treasures in history. And as we explore this incredible story, we will uncover why a coin minted in 1980 in Philadelphia could carry such immense value, how rare minting errors occur, the types of errors known to be associated with this year and mint mark, the stories of collectors who discovered such pieces, the cultural significance of coin collecting, and why people are willing to spend millions on coins that most of us might have passed over in our pockets without a second thought, and what makes the 1980p quarter in particular stand out in ways that very few coins ever do. So let's begin with the basics, because understanding why this coin is worth $6 million requires us to understand not only the technical minting errors that set it apart but also the environment of American coinage at the time, as the late 1970s and early 1980s were a transformative period in United States coinage history, with inflation, changing metal compositions, and a push for efficiency at the mints leading to numerous experimental runs, rushed production cycles, and ultimately mistakes that slipped through quality control. And among these mistakes, the 1980p quarter became legendary. Minted in Philadelphia with no mint mark, as was typical at the time, since the P mark wasn't added to quarters until 1980 for collector sets, and many of these coins were struck quickly and in large quantities, but only a handful were struck with errors so unique that they would later be valued in the millions, including off-center strikes where the coin design is shifted significantly to one side leaving a blank crescent of metal, double die obverse errors where the lettering and design appear doubled giving the coin a distinct shadow-like look on words such as liberty or I in God we trust, planchet errors where the wrong metal was used or the coin was struck on a planchet meant for another denomination such as a nickel or dime, clipped planchet errors where part of the coin's rim is missing due to a misfeed in the blank cutting process, die cracks where lines of raised metal appear across Washington's portrait or the eagle on the reverse like scars from a misaligned die, and even more dramatic transitional errors that occur when a coin is struck on leftover planchets from prior years or experimental compositions that were never meant for release. And with the 1980p quarter, several such errors have been documented, but the most famous and the one attributed to the $6 million valuation is a spectacular combination error where the coin exhibits both a double die obverse and a wrong planchet strike, believed to have been struck on a foreign coin blank during a period when the mint was simultaneously producing coins for foreign governments, leading to a quarter that is not only doubled in its design but also struck on metal with a different weight and composition, making it stand out dramatically when compared to normal quarters. And such a combination error is practically unheard of, with perhaps only one or two surviving examples in pristine condition, and the rarity of these pieces is what drives collectors into bidding wars, pushing the value into the millions, because when only one or two coins in the world can tell a story this unique, their desirability skyrockets. And if we imagine the journey of such a coin from 1980 when it left the Philadelphia Mint unnoticed, perhaps circulated briefly in pocket change, then tucked away unknowingly in someone's drawer, only to resurface decades later in a collection or a coin roll hunt, we can see why it would electrify the numismatic community. And beyond just the technical errors, there is also the cultural narrative of coin collecting that plays into its valuation. Since coin collecting is not just about owning metal but about owning a piece of history, a tangible artifact that carries with it stories of human error, industrial process, and the unpredictability of chance. And that unpredictability is what makes the 1980p quarter so alluring, because when millions of coins are struck perfectly and only a few slip through the cracks with such dramatic mistakes, those few become treasures. And the very idea that an ordinary quarter could one day be worth $6 million encourages countless collectors and enthusiasts to examine every coin they come across, hunting for the next hidden gem, fueling a worldwide hobby that combines history, economics, artistry, and the thrill of discovery. And if we look deeper into the kinds of errors associated with this coin, we see that the double die obverse is one of the most exciting, because doubling in the design often creates a visually striking coin that even beginners can spot, with the letters in Liberty and the numbers in the date appearing doubled, almost like a 3D effect. And such doubling happens when the die itself is struck more than once slightly misaligned during preparation, so every coin struck from that die carries the doubling. And while minor doubling is somewhat common, major doubling is extremely rare and prized. and then when combined with being struck on a wrong planchet such as a copper-nickel planchet intended for another country's coinage, the uniqueness multiplies. And these are the kinds of conditions that set the stage for a valuation of $6 million, because when rarity meets desirability meets condition, the result is astronomical value, and condition is another major factor because in numismatics the grading scale from poor to mint state 70 determines value heavily, and while a common era coin in circulated condition may only bring hundreds or thousands of dollars, one preserved in uncirculated mint state with full details and luster can command exponential value increases, and for the 1980p quarter that reached $6 million it is believed to have been in nearly flawless condition, amplifying its rarity and desirability. And when we consider the broader picture, coins like this don't just fetch millions because of metal content but because they are irreplaceable artifacts, and in auctions where billionaires and museums compete for ownership, the sky's the limit. And this is why such valuations matter, because they inspire a new generation of collectors to look closely at their change, to appreciate the artistry of coinage, and to remember that mistakes, though unintended, can create beauty and value beyond imagination. And when we discuss possibilities, we should also consider the hypothetical scenarios where other 1980p quarters with yet undiscovered errors may still exist, perhaps sitting in a coin jar or forgotten in a safe deposit box, waiting for someone to notice their odd weight or unusual design doubling. And if one coin can reach 6 million, who's to say another could not someday surpass that, depending on demand and the uniqueness of its errors? And that's what makes coin collecting such a thrilling pursuit, the idea that history, luck, and attention to detail can turn a 25-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar artifact. And so as we reflect on the 1980p quarter and its extraordinary story, we see not just a coin but a symbol of the power of rarity, error, and human fascination with tangible pieces of history, reminding us that treasure often hides in plain sight. And before we conclude, I encourage you to stay engaged with stories like these, because every coin has a story to tell, and perhaps the next story could be in your own pocket. So make sure you check your change carefully and keep exploring the fascinating world of coins. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the mystery and value of the 1980p quarter worth $6 million, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories about coins, history, and hidden treasures that could change the way you look at money forever. Next, the 1989p quarter dollar, a coin that has generated enormous buzz in the coin collecting world and beyond because of its rumored value of up to $3.5 million, a staggering amount for something originally minted for only 25 cents, and today we are going to explore exactly why this particular coin has captured so much attention, why it is worth such an astronomical amount to collectors, and how the unusual combination of errors, mistakes, and rare possibilities have made it one of the most iconic treasures in modern coin history. So sit back and let's go through the incredible details surrounding this 1989p quarter and why it is considered worth big money by those who know the secrets of coin minting and collecting, because understanding this coin means looking at both the minting process of the late 1980s and the unique characteristics that made this particular piece so extraordinary. And one of the first things we need to realize is that the 1989p quarter was produced in the Philadelphia Mint, which is known for creating coins that bear the P mint mark and where millions of quarter dollars were minted in that year. But amidst the mass production, a very small number of coins slipped through with striking errors, planchet mistakes, die misalignments, and unusual features that turned them from regular change into multi-million-dollar collectibles. And collectors who understand the minting process know that even the smallest deviation from normal production standards can elevate a coin into a rare treasure, especially when that error is dramatic, highly visible, and difficult to replicate. And with the 1989p quarter we see examples of off-center strikes, double dies, broad strikes, missing clad layers, die cracks, and even some that were struck on experimental planchets. And these are precisely the kinds of mistakes that not only intrigue collectors but also drastically raise the potential value of the coin. And in the case of the 1989p quarter, that value has been magnified to the point where examples have been rumored to trade hands for millions of dollars, with the highest estimates reaching around $3.5 million for a particularly rare specimen. And to understand why this is possible, we need to examine the different types of errors that can occur during the minting process and how they apply specifically to the 1989p quarter. Because in 1989 the Philadelphia Mint was working with high-speed presses that were striking thousands of coins per minute, and when anything goes wrong at that pace, the results can be both spectacular and rare, starting with the double die error where the design elements on the obverse or reverse appear doubled because the die itself was improperly prepared, and this can cause Washington's portrait to appear shadowed or the inscriptions like Liberty, Indiana, God We Trust, or the date 1989 to appear doubled, making for a dramatic error that collectors covet. And then there are off-center strikes where the blank planchet is not properly aligned with the dies, resulting in a coin that shows only part of the design with a blank crescent of metal remaining visible. And the more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin, particularly if the date remains visible, because that allows collectors to identify the year of error. And then we also find broad strikes, where the collar that normally holds the coin in place during striking malfunctions, causing the design to spread out beyond the normal borders of the coin, creating an unusual look that is instantly noticeable. And of course, missing clad layer errors also occurred on some 1989 P quarters, where the nickel outer layer was missing, leaving a copper-colored surface that looks dramatically different from a regular quarter. And such coins are prized because they visually stand out and are relatively rare. But perhaps the most intriguing possibility with the 1989 P quarter is that some were struck on the wrong planchet altogether, with reports of quarters struck on cent planchets, nickel planchets, and even foreign coin planchets that somehow made their way into the production line. And these types of minting anomalies are the crown jewels of coin errors because they produce one-of-a-kind pieces that command astronomical values. And when we put all of this together, we can see why the 1989 P quarter has gained such a reputation, because it combines the allure of multiple possible minting mistakes with the fact that the Philadelphia Mint produced such a massive quantity of coins that errors inevitably occurred, but very few survived in pristine condition. And when an example does appear in high-grade condition with an error so dramatic that it could not possibly go unnoticed, collectors are willing to pay staggering sums, sometimes in the millions, because they are essentially purchasing a unique piece of history, a coin that should not exist but somehow does. And that kind of anomaly is irresistible to serious numismatists. And the story of the 1989 P quarter, valued at $3.5 million, is also tied to the psychology of collecting, because coin collectors are constantly seeking rarity, uniqueness, and the thrill of owning something that nobody else has. And a coin like this represents the ultimate prize. And over the years, stories have circulated about record-setting private sales, auction whispers, and hidden treasures that involve the 1989 P quarter, fueling the legend of its multi-million-dollar valuation. And part of what makes this coin so compelling is not just the errors themselves but also the historical context, because 1989 was a year when the United States Mint was continuing to refine its processes but still relied heavily on mechanical systems that were prone to occasional malfunctions. Unlike today, where computer-controlled precision has reduced the number of dramatic errors, so coins from the transitional period are more likely to have spectacular mistakes. And because the 1989 P quarter is modern enough to be relatable to current collectors yet old enough to have escaped notice in circulation for decades, it represents the perfect storm of availability and rarity, with the right coin surfacing at the right time, making headlines and setting jaw-dropping price records. And when we dig deeper into the anatomy of these errors, we realize how many layers of possibility exist, because not all errors are created equal, and the market values certain types of mistakes more highly than others, with double dies and off-metal strikes often commanding the most attention, while subtle die cracks or minor planchet flaws might bring a premium but nothing close to the $1 million level. So for the 1989 P quarter to reach $3.5 million, it would almost certainly involve a spectacular and dramatic combination of errors, perhaps a double die obverse combined with an off-center strike and struck on the wrong planchet. And if that coin were preserved in mint state condition without ever being damaged in circulation, then its uniqueness would justify such an incredible valuation. And this is what excites collectors, the thought that a single overlooked coin in pocket change could turn out to be worth a fortune. And because so few people check their change carefully, millions of these coins have passed through hands unnoticed. But somewhere out there are the rare survivors that carry these valuable mistakes, and stories of people finding such coins in old collections, inherited coin jars, or even tucked away in forgotten piggy banks add to the intrigue. And this is why the 1989 P quarter is not just a coin but a legend, a symbol of how even the smallest piece of currency can become a treasure worth more than houses, cars, or even entire estates. And the fascination with this coin continues to grow as collectors chase the dream of finding one, and every auction or coin show brings with it the possibility that another rare specimen will surface, further fueling the fire of speculation. And as long as the mystique of minting errors and the thrill of numismatic treasure hunting remain alive, the 1989 P quarter will continue to be one of the most captivating and potentially valuable coins in circulation history. And before we wrap up, remember that this story is more than just about money. It's about history, mystery, and the human desire to discover something extraordinary in the ordinary. So always check your pocket change, Always pay attention to the details, because you never know when a simple quarter might turn out to be worth millions. And with that, we thank you for joining us on this incredible exploration of the 1989 P quarter valued at $3.5 million. And if you enjoyed learning about this fascinating piece of history and want to continue discovering more amazing coin stories, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next numismatic adventure. Today, as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in modern numismatics, a story that takes us back to 1988 and involves a small but incredibly valuable piece of American history, the 1988 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that in some rare cases has fetched a mind-blowing $2.7 million at auctions and in private sales because of the errors, mistakes, and anomalies that occurred during its production, making it one of the most desirable pieces for serious coin collectors and investors around the world. And today we are going to break down every detail of what makes this coin so valuable, from the historical context in which it was minted, to the types of errors that have been documented, to the possibilities that certain mistakes might exist that have not yet been fully discovered, and why these combinations of factors push the value of a 25-cent piece into the multi-million-dollar range. And as you listen to this story, you will begin to see how a seemingly ordinary pocket change coin can transform into a life-changing treasure simply because of the way it was struck, the metal it was made from, the mint mark it carries, and the unusual circumstances under which it left the Denver Mint. So let us begin by taking you back to 1988, a year that in many ways represented a transitional time for American coinage, with the U.S. Mint still relying on the classic Washington quarter design first introduced in 1932 to honor George Washington's 200th birthday, but also preparing for major changes that would come later in the 1990s when the state quarters program was being conceived, and in that year millions upon millions of quarters were struck at the Denver Mint bearing the D mint mark, most of them being entirely ordinary coins that circulated heavily across the nation. But within that sea of normality, a handful of coins were struck with mistakes so rare that they would later be identified as some of the most valuable errors ever to leave a minting facility, and one of those pieces, the 1988 Washington quarter with its extreme rarity and striking anomalies, has become legendary because of the enormous $2.7 million value it has achieved. Now, what exactly makes a 1988 quarter so special? Well, there are several categories of minting errors that can dramatically affect the value of any coin, including double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, transitional errors, and wrong metal planchet strikes. And in the case of the 1988 quarter, examples have been found that showcase some of the most spectacular and visually obvious errors possible, starting with double die obverse varieties where the inscriptions such as, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or even the date itself appear with doubling, a result of the hubbing process when the design was imprinted improperly on the die, and collectors go absolutely wild for such varieties, especially when the doubling is strong and easily visible to the naked eye, because it leaves no doubt that the coin is an authentic error. Another fascinating category of errors on the 1988 quarter includes off-center strikes, where the blank planchet was not properly seated between the dies during striking, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted dramatically to one side. And in the most extreme examples of off-center strikes, the coin shows only part of Washington's bust on the obverse and part of the eagle on the reverse, creating a strikingly unusual appearance that collectors cherish. And in cases where the coin still retains a full readable date and mint mark while being dramatically off-center, the value skyrockets into the hundreds of thousands, adding to the overall mythos of this coin being worth millions. But perhaps the most dramatic and valuable of all possible errors associated with the 1988 quarter are those involving wrong metal planchets or transitional compositions, because during the 1980s the U.S. Mint was experimenting and transitioning with different coin compositions, and while quarters at that time were supposed to be made of copper nickel clad over a copper core, sometimes a coin was mistakenly struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, such as a dime or a foreign coin planchet, and these mistakes are incredibly valuable. Imagine a 1988 quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet left over from pre-1965 coinage, or struck on a planchet intended for a foreign currency contract that the U.S. Mint was fulfilling at the time, such as coins for Central or South American countries. These wrong planchet errors are so rare that when one surfaces, the bidding frenzy at auctions can drive the price into the millions, and this is one of the reasons why a verified example of the 1988 quarter with an extraordinary error like this has fetched the fabled $2.7 million figure, because collectors know that there may only be one or two of its kind in existence. Furthermore, another possible type of error adding to the 1988 D-quarters mystique are die cracks and cuds, which occur when the minting dies themselves begin to wear out or crack, leaving raised lines or missing portions of design on the coin. These errors often produce unique patterns and each coin can be considered one of a kind, and while most die cracks might only add modest premiums to a coin's value, in the case of the 1988 D-quarter some examples have shown spectacular die breaks that cover large portions of the design, creating dramatic visual appeal, and in combination with other errors these become million-dollar pieces. And beyond the mechanical minting errors, another factor that adds immense value to the 1988 D-quarter is its condition and grade, because most 1988 D-quarters circulated heavily and show significant wear, but when an error coin survives in pristine mint state condition, especially if it has been certified by leading grading services like PCGS or NGC as MS65, MS67, or even higher, the rarity is compounded. And collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums for the privilege of owning such a perfect and rare specimen. So when you consider a coin like the 1988 D-quarter with a dramatic error, extraordinary condition, and undeniable historical significance, you begin to see how the value could climb to $2.7 million. And what makes this coin even more intriguing is the speculation about other varieties and possibilities that may still exist but remain undiscovered, because the mint struck hundreds of millions of quarters that year, and buried within that massive production could be other mistruck pieces, transitional errors, or unique anomalies waiting to be found in old coin jars, collections, or even pocket change, which is why stories of the 1988 D-quarter continue to inspire treasure hunters and coin roll searchers across America. The dream that you could stumble upon one of these multi-million-dollar treasures while sorting through ordinary change is one of the most exciting parts of numismatics, and as history shows us, such discoveries do happen. People have pulled rare double dies, off-metal errors, and other million-dollar coins straight from circulation, and while the odds are slim, the possibility is real, fueling the fascination around coins like the 1988 D-quarter. So what makes this specific coin worth such staggering amounts is not only the physical errors it bears, but also the narrative surrounding it, the rarity, the dramatic nature of its anomalies, the perfection of its preservation, the enthusiasm of the collectors who bid for it, and the fact that once such a coin is sold, it often disappears into private collections for decades, adding to its aura of mystery, and all of this creates the perfect storm of rarity and demand that drives the price into millions. So as we reflect on the story of the 1988 D-Washington quarter worth $2.7 million, we see a microcosm of what makes coin collecting so endlessly fascinating, the idea that a simple object of daily commerce can transform into a priceless artifact because of a few twists of fate during the minting process. And the lesson for all of us is to always check your change carefully, because hidden within might be a coin that changes your life forever. And if you enjoyed this incredible journey into the world of rare coins, make sure you stick around for more stories like this. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the chance to learn about the treasures that might be hiding right in your pocket.